inspiring moment. Millionaire yelled at Waitress, but her hidden response transformed the entire day. Sarah rushed between tables, her smile bright despite the chaos engulfing the evergreen diner. The clatter of dishes and the chatter of patrons created a familiar rhythm she had mastered over her 8 years as a waitress. Juggling coffee pots and plates filled with comfort food was second nature to her now. But today was different. With mounting stress over the bills at home and her night classes looming, she could feel tension winding through her chest like a coiled spring. As she poured coffee for Mr. Collins, the retired schoolteacher, she caught sight of him giving an approving nod, his weathered face creasing into a smile. That small moment warmed her heart, but couldn't ease the pressure brewing inside her, compounded by the responsibility of raising 2 young kids alone. She silently questioned if she was doing enough, if the late nights studying were worth it, or if she'd just end up trapped in this diner forever. Just then, the door swung open violently, and in strode John, an imposing figure with impatience radiating from him. He scanned the diner, his eyes narrowing as he took in the packed tables and the fray of scattered orders. Frustrated, he barked at Sarah as she approached, catching her off guard. "Do you people always take this long? I have places to be." The cafe seemed to freeze, the laughter dying down as the tension became palpable. Sarah clenched her jaw, her resolve fighting against the prickling heat of humiliation spreading across her cheeks. How dare he treat her like a cog, with no regard for her humanity? But instead of retreating under his attack, something shifted deep within her. Taking a breath, she steadied herself. "Sir, I'm really sorry for the wait. We're doing our best here," she said, her voice calm yet firm, projecting strength that surprised even her. It wasn't just about coffee or rush hour. This was about so much more. That John's anger faltered momentarily as he blinked, taken aback by her poise. "You should understand this isn't how business works," he snapped, but Sarah pressed on, her internal conflict raging. "I get that, but everyone here has their battles, including you, I'm sure," she replied, feeling the weight of staring eyes upon her. "All it takes is a little patience. A bit of kindness can change a whole day." Her words hung in the air, clashing with John's hardened demeanor. As Sarah spoke, a kaleidoscope of emotions stirred within her, a blend of fear the moment would vanish, and a fierce determination not to succumb. She envisioned her kids, their bright eyes, and the better life she yearned for. Yet uncertainty gnawed at her. Could empathy truly thaw the ice that surrounded someone like him? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The diner hummed with an electric tension. Eyes darted between them, every heart attuned to this unexpected standoff. John grappled with the serrated edges of his own existence, unfurling insecurities he'd buried with his success. Her candidness struck him, a stark contrast to the walls he had built. Could he bridge the cavern dividing their worlds? But just as a flicker of realization ignited within him, fear flickered back. What if reaching out meant losing himself in a world he didn't understand? Could a self-made millionaire extend his hand to uplift a working-class mother? Or would he shrink back into the safety of his privilege? The unanswered questions hung thick, pressing against him like the weight of an impending storm. They both stood frozen at this unexpected junction, shifting toward a moment that could redefine their futures, suspended in a silence that thrummed with possibility but remained agonizingly unresolved. The stillness between them was electric, the air thick with the weight of unspoken words. Sarah's heart raced, not just from the immediate confrontation, but from a deeper realization dawning on her. She had spoken with a conviction that surprised even herself, revealing latent strength she had barely scratched the surface of. This moment, however fleeting, seemed to promise a shift not just in John, but within her. John's gaze faltered, the fire in his eyes dimming momentarily as he weighed her words. In that instant, Sarah glimpsed the cracks in his facade, the unease that lay beneath the surface of his aggression. He was more than a mere antagonist. He was a mirror reflecting her own struggles. She thought of her late-night study sessions, the weariness cloaked in determination as she balanced her dreams against the daily grind of waiting tables. The diner's ambience shifted, patrons whispering among themselves, but their focus remained locked on the pair. Sarah took a breath, her mind racing. Was this a pivotal moment destined to dissolve with his next harsh word? Or could she forge a connection that transcended their societal divide? Her instincts nudged her forward. You might find more value in a conversation than in trying to crush anyone's spirit, she stated, her tone steady. John bristled, but the edges of his defensiveness rounded slightly. An inkling of intrigue sparked behind his narrowed eyes. What he didn't know about himself was as vast as the chasm separating them. Sarah, barely holding her ground, felt the possibility flickering around them. Could this be an opportunity to redefine not just his view, but her own? A faint twitch of hesitation ran through him. She could almost see the gears turning in his mind, grappling with years of privilege and isolation from emotional vulnerability. Sarah recognized this internal tension. She lived it daily, heavy with the weight of expectations. It was a crossroads they both stood at, faced with choices that could lead them down vastly different paths. The chatter among other diners faded, leaving an echoing silence that seemed to amplify her words. Just because you've made your way to the top doesn't mean you've fully arrived, she said, the sharp clarity of her message cutting through the tension. Sometimes that requires looking down, recognizing the struggles of others instead of dismissing them. For a fleeting moment, John's defensive posture faltered, revealing something more fragile underneath. This was no longer just about a disgruntled customer and an overwhelmed waitress. It was about understanding, vulnerability, and a shared human experience. Perhaps this time, they were not strangers, but two people lost in their respective battles, reaching for something more profound, a connection. But as quickly as the moment unfolded, doubt clawed back at Sarah's mind. Was she foolish to believe he could change? What if he chose to retreat back into the safety of his world, shutting down her voice just as she found it? She could feel the weight of the watchful eyes around them, their collective expectations heightening her anxiety. Yet just as John opened his mouth, preparing to respond, the diner door swung open again, flooding the room with bright afternoon light. A siren wailed in the distance, stirring vivid memories and reminders of urgency. In both their lives, a reminder that the moment wouldn't last forever. Look, John began, captured between two worlds. The words hung, unformed and powerful, an invitation to a different future. Sarah felt the pulse of a new path ahead of her, but as swiftly as the opportunity appeared, it threatened to slip away. Would she push him to confront himself, or would she cower in the face of what lay ahead? Her heart raced with uncertainty. The moment of truth was upon them, her chance to redefine not only their interaction, but perhaps her own trajectory. With determination swelling inside her, she tightened her grip on the edge of the table, ready to seize the moment. The culmination of all her struggles, lessons, and aspirations hung in the balance, waiting for John's next words to either ignite a flicker of change or send them both spiraling back to their old, isolated lives. The words hung between them, alive with possibility and tension. Sarah felt her pulse quicken, the balance of power shifting somehow. John's initial anger seemed to dissolve into something softer, the defensive walls he had built year after year beginning to crack under the heat of her candidness. She knew she had touched a nerve, but what lay underneath? The intricate layers of his persona swirled in her thoughts, and she realized this was a moment she could either embrace or let slip away. She took a deep breath, the scent of coffee filling her senses, a fleeting comfort against the storm brewing in her chest. "I'm not asking you to dive into the ocean, John," she said quietly, her voice steady. "Just start with a puddle. Maybe we can figure out where we both stand before we lose ourselves again." His brows furrowed, confusion mingled with intrigue. Sarah understood this game. She had played it too often in her own life, the delicate dance of expectations versus reality. For every late-night shift that left her fingers aching and eyelids heavy, there lay an insatiable hunger for acknowledgement. Here was the embodiment of entitlement, someone shielded from the experiences that shaped her existence, an adversary whom she could either despise or empathize with, and no doubt lingered in her mind of the privilege John wore like armor. But Sarah was determined not to let that cloud her purpose. This wasn't solely about him. It was also about her own growth. Behind her years of battling obscurity and being the underdog, there existed a formidable self, one that could articulate where others failed. She had glimpsed a shadow of her capabilities when she stood up to him. Now, it was time to press on that potential. The table between them served as a barrier and a bridge. Sarah chose to take a leap. "You keep talking about success and power, but have you ever stopped to ask at what cost?" The words rolled off her tongue like a challenge, pulling John from his indecisiveness. "You've got the wealth, the connections, but do you ever feel lonely? Have you ever wondered if everything you've built is truly yours, or just an illusion?" For a moment, John's hardened exterior softened, and Sarah could see the flicker of frustration and confusion play across his features. "You have no idea what it's like," he finally muttered, his voice low. Yet there was a tremor beneath the surface that suggested vulnerability. "Then show me," she urged gently. "Share with me the truth behind the exterior. Or are you too afraid of what you might find?" She pressed her lips together, her heart thundering against her ribcage. Was she really pressing him to untangle this mess of human intimacy and vulnerability? A long silence expanded between them, punctuated only by the distant clatter of dishes. But for Sarah, that silence transformed into a crucible, a place where she could confront not only John, but herself as well. If she could peel back the layers of his bravado, what would that reveal for her? Each second stretched taut with a weight of shared truths yet to surface. "Okay," John finally said, resolve creeping into his tone, altering the entire mood around them. "What do you want to know?" For Sarah, it felt as if the ground beneath her could finally unleash the potential she had felt shivering at her fingertips. This wasn't just a dialogue. It was the beginning of dismantling the barriers between them. Standing on the precipice of discovery, she felt a sense of urgency that this dynamic had shifted now but could easily revert with negligence. The tenuous threads of conversation woven between them promised a new direction. Sarah sensed the first steps toward a transformative chapter in her life, a chance not just to witness change, but to be a catalyst for it. What would she uncover in the depths of their exchange, and how would it shape her beliefs about the world? As the weight of John's question hung in the air, Sarah steeled herself, recognizing this as a turning point in her journey. The possibilities swirled around her, dizzying yet exhilarating. Would they unravel the complexities of their intertwined fates, or would fear drive a wedge between them once more? This was the moment she had fought for, the key to redefining both her reality and perhaps even his. And yet, looming uncertainty gnawed at her thoughts. Was this exchange merely the prelude to a deeper confrontation? As she prepared to delve into his world, another thought pierced through. How might her boldness affect her standing in her own life? Once this moment unraveled, John leaned back in his chair, his thoughtful gaze intensely focused on Sarah, as if searching for answers within her unwavering demeanor. A low hum of tension enveloped their tiny corner of the cafe, but it pulsated with the promises of discovery. Sarah felt the electric thrill of anticipation coursing through her veins. This was not just an opportunity for John to peel back his layers, but one for her to examine her own. "What do I want to know?" she echoed, mind racing through the potential questions. Her instinct was to dive deep, aiming straight for the heart of his insecurities, but a more reverent caution held her back. She realized that this exchange could very well define her own trajectory, proving to herself that she had the strength and insight to navigate the intricacies of powerful human connections. "Let us start with the surface," she decided. "What drove you into the world of finance? Was it ambition, or were you trying to escape something?" The simplicity of the questions surprised even her, yet it felt necessary to allow John room to breathe, to remember he was not alone in this interaction. His surprise was evident, quickly morphing into a calculating stare. Sarah could see the gears turning behind his eyes. Was he trying to discern her intentions, or searching for fragments of self-understanding? "You think you know me, don't you?" he retorted finally, a hint of defiance in his tone. "I think I know the part you show to the world," she replied, her voice dropping to emphasize sincerity. "The flashy car, the tailored suits, they exist to impress, to shield you. But I'm asking what's hidden beneath all that. What really matters?" The flicker in his eyes spoke volumes, a fleeting crack in the facade. Sarah sensed their conversation straddling a tipping point, a fractious dynamic teetering between vulnerability and defensiveness. It catalyzed an unsettling self-reflection. She too wore masks, hiding her fears beneath the weight of her own ambitions and dreams. John leaned in closer, elbows on the table, weighing his words. "I thought success meant having everything under control. But sometimes it feels like I'm just managing chaos," he confessed, almost self-derisively. A piece of him seemed to open up, albeit cautiously, and Sarah held back a grin. They were moving beyond mere assumptions. Both were starting to discover the essence of genuine interaction. "Chaos is an interesting choice," she probed thoughtfully, stepping deeper. "What if the chaos isn't the enemy? What if it's your way of breaking free from everything else?" He looked stunned, pausing to absorb her question. The silence that followed was pregnant with possibilities, the prolonged stillness of real contemplation. Could she be tapping into something profound, igniting acknowledgement even he had avoided? With a wary smile, he finally shook his head, a half-laugh escaping his lips. "You think too much, but I like it." A rush of elation surged within Sarah, knowing that this was more than just a flirtation with vulnerability. It was an invitation to explore personal truths. She was learning how to navigate a complex maze of emotions that lay between them, and perhaps her exploration would allow her to unravel her own. Their burgeoning dialogue felt invigorating, a cooperative unearthing of buried truths. Yet the nagging uncertainty returned as sharp as ever. Was this moment merely a fleeting spark, or would they continue this dance of exploration beyond the walls of their coffee shop conversation? With a newfound resolve, Sarah nudged the conversation forward. "If we accept chaos can be part of our evolution, what might that mean for you moving forward?" As she asked the question, Sarah felt a wave of anticipation and fear wash over her. The venture into this unexplored territory could provoke the kind of truth that alters everything. What would it cost her to keep digging? And what if John's revelations reshaped her own understanding of success and identity? Across the table, John's expression shifted once more. He looked like a man on the brink of self-discovery, teetering and yet decisive, as if he too understood they were forging a path that would inevitably challenge them both. The moment stretched, and she held her breath. Would he take the plunge, or had they merely skimmed the edges of underlying fears? Somewhere in that silence lay potential a discovery that could redefine not just their connection, but who they thought they were. The weight of their exchange trembled on the brink of revelation, poised to transform the boundaries of their lives. Would they plunge deeper together, or would fear pull them back into isolation? John took a deep breath, as if summoning the courage to confront his own truths. Yet, Sarah could see the shadows flickering in his eyes, a mixture of yearning and resistance. Moving forward, he began, the words trailing off into silence, a labyrinth of thoughts winding beneath the surface. "What if I told you that I'm terrified of making the wrong decision?" John finally confessed, the vulnerability hanging like a delicate thread between them. "Every choice feels like a gamble, with my career, with my relationships. What if I lose it all?" Sarah recognized the weight of his surrender. It mirrored her own fears more than she was willing to acknowledge. She leaned in, her voice steady. Losing it all can often lead to something new, something unexpected. It might just be the push you need to reinvent yourself. His eyes flickered with doubt, yet a glimmer of curiosity threaded through the tension. And what if I choose wrong again? What if I create chaos out of chaos? Chaos isn't defeat, Sarah stated, her conviction laced with her own unfolding revelation. It's where growth starts. Sometimes we have to crumble to rebuild a stronger foundation. She felt her own heart race, empowering herself with her words, as though the act of speaking them solidified their truth. John regarded her deeply, the barriers of defensiveness slowly crumbling beneath the narrative they were weaving. So, you're saying the chaos can be a springboard? That's not just noise, but opportunity? Exactly, Sarah replied, sensing the shift in his perception. By recognizing what chaos means to you, you can choose to channel it into something valuable. Gaining control begins with acknowledgement, accepting where you are instead of running from it. She could sense the energy in the cafe grow heavier, the world outside fading as they delved deeper into their exploration. The modern decor felt like a metaphor for their own desires, paradoxically anchored by invisible ties of expectation and fear. But now, amidst the buzz of conversations and clinking cups, something fundamental began to shift within John. She saw the determination flickering in his eyes. What if I try embracing that chaos you talk about? He pondered aloud, the gears of his mind visibly recalibrating. What would that even look like truly? Sarah felt a rush of exhilaration. The conversation was no longer just a dialogue about John's uncertainties. It was a mirror reflecting her own struggles and aspirations. It starts with small steps, recognizing moments where chaos usually paralyzes you, and then choosing to engage with it instead. Maybe it's a conversation you've been avoiding or a risk to take at work. John leaned back slightly, a semblance of newfound resolve etching itself into his posture. What about you? How do you handle your chaos? He had turned the lens back on her, and for the first time, she felt the heat of uncertainty enveloping her. This was her moment to either retreat or confront the intricate layers masked under her own ambitions. She could recount the safe answers or dare to unveil her own tumultuous journey. I often drown it out with work, thinking that if I achieve enough professionally, everything else will fall into place. Her voice quivered slightly, revealing hesitation. But maybe that's just a distraction. As the weight of her admission hung in the air, she felt a pang of vulnerability. Sharing this felt like stripping away another layer of her carefully cultivated identity. Yet, the truth surged through her veins. The desire to grow and evolve outweighed the fear of exposure. John studied her with a profound intensity, the defenses he clung to sharpening into focus. So, we're both in this dance of chaos, waiting for clarity that may never come. The mutual reflection ignited a bond neither anticipated. They weren't just two beings discussing vulnerabilities. They were two individuals grappling with the concept of self-worth against fluctuating expectations. Each of them, on the edge of a precipice, confronted the profound realization that their journeys were intrinsically linked by the chaos they tried to navigate. So, John murmured, a challengingly fierce spirit emerging in his tone. Are you ready to take the plunge into your chaos with me? To explore this uncomfortable but necessary territory? Sarah felt her pulse quicken, the acumen of their conversation swirling like a tempest. As they prepared to confront their chaotic realities together, she understood that the path ahead wouldn't just redefine their connection, but might reshape who they truly were. Absolutely, she replied with conviction, her heart buoyed by the prospect of their shared uncertainty. The cafe pulsed with life around them, but in that moment, they forged a fragile alliance against the confusion awaiting them. Sarah couldn't help but ponder. Would they emerge transformed, or would the complexities of personal growth awaken tensions neither could withstand? As they forged into this new venture, the looming shadows of doubt echoed, a daunting question. Could courage persevere against the fear of losing their built facades? Sarah felt the atmosphere shift as they took the first step into their shared chaos, standing on the edge of an unknown cliff. The realization hit her with a wave of anxiety. Embracing the discomfort meant reevaluating everything she thought she knew about herself. She looked at John, who seemed to carry the same trepidation, yet beneath it, a fierce determination flickered. What if we start by setting one goal? Sarah suggested, her voice steady, though internally she wrestled with her own hesitations. Something tangible that forces us to face this chaos head-on. It could refresh our paths in life. John leaned forward, his brow furrowed in concentration. Like what? Like confronting someone who has been on your mind, the boss you've hesitated to speak up to about your ideas, or maybe reaching out to an old friend you've lost touch with. As she spoke, Sarah knew she was also alluding to her own fears, her past riddled with missed opportunities and muffled cries for genuine connection. John's expression shifted. The idea began to take root. Okay, reaching out to my boss isn't that daunting. But how about confronting my own ambition? I've been playing it safe for too long. I'm going to pitch that project I've been avoiding. The thought sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. She admired his boldness, even as a voice in her head questioned her own willingness. Facing John's anticipation began to embolden her resolve. What about you? He pressed, his eyes narrowing as if demanding her commitment. What is your chaos trigger? I've been meaning to reconnect with my old mentor, she admitted, her voice barely a whisper. Her hands fidgeted on the table, a reflection of her internal turmoil. She was pivotal in my career, and we drifted apart after I got too caught up in just working. It feels out of reach now to approach her after all this time. Why wait? John challenged her, the flame of his motivation igniting a spark within her. Isn't that what we've been talking about? Taking a leap into the discomfort? He had a point. Each moment spent distancing herself from that dangerously close bond only built a wall higher. Could she truly allow fear to overshadow the opportunity for growth? Yes, Sarah breathed out, feeling the pressure mount, anticipating the choice she would make outside these cafe walls, a promise to herself and John that she wouldn't shy away. I'll do it. The words felt like an incantation. The sound of their solidifying commitments surged through the cafe, drowning out the hum of life around them. But with the intention sprang forth a dual sense of anxiety. Old remnants of self-doubt tugged at her, raising questions about the readiness to face her past. As John began outlining his pitch strategy, she watched the shift in him, the way he became animated, reclaiming parts of himself. Was she ready to sketch new narratives too? With every passing second, the uncertainty mingled with excitement, a dangerous mix that felt electric. I think we've stumbled into something important here, John said, a spark of realization transforming his tone. These initial confrontations are more than just about addressing fear. They might represent a recalibration of our true selves. Exactly, she mused, her thoughts swirling with possibilities. Each step taken would gradually chisel away the layers holding her back. They were forging a path of discomfort, welcoming growth in their lives. But then, a shadow echoed in the back of her mind. What if reconnecting went poorly? What if it unraveled years of latent regrets rather than mending them? Let us put a timeline on this. John's voice grounded her back to their discussion, pulling her from her spiraling thoughts. What if we set a date in the next week to take these steps? A fresh wave of urgency raced through her at the notion. Next week might be too soon for me, she admitted slowly, but the idea of having a deadline spurred her forward. How about I reach out in 3 days? I need a touchstone. 3 days it is, he confirmed, sealing the promise with a nod. As they sat in the swirling chaos of their conversation, Sarah understood the depth of this pact. They were not just committing to action, but to accountability. The cafe around them buzzed with life, indifferent to their transformative moment. Yet, Sarah felt invigorated by the potential of self-discovery. the thrill of revealing layers she had long tucked away. She exchanged a determined look with John, feeling a kinship in their relentless pursuit of growth. But as the moment of clarity began to settle in her mind, the chill of doubt loomed. Would they truly rise to the challenges they set, or would fear strip away their newfound resolve, a disheartening spiral into the familiar chaos? The question hung in the air, as thick and palpable as the coffee-scented breeze that wrapped around them. It became clear they were on the brink of a journey that could redefine not only their paths, but their very identities. Little did they know, the chaos awaiting them was just beginning, and it beckoned with its own unanswered questions. Sarah stood at her kitchen counter, her phone poised in her hand, the screen illuminating her anxious expression. 3 days passed in a blur, each moment stretching before her like a weight she had to carry. Connecting with her mentor felt like a mountain she needed to scale. The excitement of commitment lingered in the air, but the gravity of doubt descended heavily upon her. She could hear John's voice echoing in her thoughts, urging her to confront her fears. Each tick of the clock intensified her internal struggle, her pulse quickening as she battled residual reluctance. What would she even say? Memories of their interactions rushed back her mentor's wisdom, the encouragement she'd given Sarah in tough times. But with those memories came the nagging presence of inadequacy. Drawing a deep breath, Sarah turned away from the phone, her mind racing through excuses. What if her mentor had moved on? What if she was no longer interested in helping someone who could have easily become a distant memory? Then a flicker of determination ignited within her. This wasn't merely about rekindling a professional relationship. It was a pivotal step toward reclaiming her own narrative. Glancing at the corkboard above her desk, she noticed the pinned reminder, "Your voice matters." The words shimmered with significance, a lifeline in her chaotic mental sea. Feeling the rush of resolve, Sarah dialed the number, her heart pounding in unison with the ringing tone. Each vibration felt like a countdown, a cue to overcome the growing fears that had kept her stagnant. The call went through, and her mentor's calm, familiar voice filled the line. "Sarah, it's been a while. How are you?" In that moment, a wave of nostalgia swept over Sarah, intertwining with a newfound sense of agency. I'm good," she stammered, the words feeling inadequate yet liberating. "I've been meaning to reach out to talk about how things have been going since we last connected." Their conversation flowed as moments transformed into minutes. She shared her experiences, touching on the fears that had restrained her, opening up in a way she hadn't planned but found necessary. Her mentor listened intently, the encouragement she gave blending seamlessly into Sarah's introspection, reaffirming the bond they had once shared. As the call wrapped up, Sarah felt a lightness and emotional release that had been building for years. The promise of reconnection gleamed brightly, alleviating doubts that had long dictated her professional demeanor. But upon hanging up, a deeper realization settled in her chest. Reconnecting was only the beginning. Across town, John paced in his living room, before his laptop, adrenaline coursing through him. It was pitch day, and he had stayed up late refining his presentation. Each bullet point sent nervous tremors through him, but adrenaline pushed against his trepidation. If Sarah could step out into her fears, so could he. Stepping to the front of his living room, he practiced the presentation, his voice rising and falling as if he were in the conference room. He envisioned his boss's reactions, the skepticism, the curiosity. Would they appreciate his ideas? He questioned what failure would mean for him. It loomed as a potential darkening cloud, pitting him against his fears of inadequacy and rejection. But as he rehearsed, a quote from Sarah echoed in his mind, "Your voice matters." He felt the adrenaline shift to confidence, solidifying within him like concrete. Failure would not break him. It could inform him and guide his journey forward. With a final resolute breath, John clicked open the video meeting link for the pitch. Back in Sarah's kitchen, the phone buzzed again. It was a text from John, a brief excitement fueled by the anticipation of their individual confrontations unfolding. Ready to face the chaos? Let's check in later. A smile crept onto her face as she started to type her response, but hesitated. Chaos would be their constant companion. Yet something deeper had shifted. What was unfolding wasn't just about overcoming fears, but about reconstructing identities and futures. And as she sent her message, a deeper concern began creeping back into her consciousness. The fears they faced today were only shadows, lingering on the surface. What if the real chaos was yet to arise, challenging their newfound strength in ways they could scarcely anticipate? The thought sent shivers down her spine, leaving her grappling with the burgeoning truth. They had only just begun to step closer to the precipice of genuine transformation, and the real challenges lay ahead, where chaos and growth would intertwine in unsettling ways. As Sarah placed her phone back on the kitchen counter, the familiar glow of the screen faded, yet the warmth of the conversation lingered. The exchange with her mentor, now etched firmly in her memory, stirred a restless energy within her. It wasn't simply about reconnecting. It felt like the first domino had finally fallen, lighting a path toward change. But what would she do next? The moment demanded action. With a newfound sense of agency washed over her, Sarah moved to her desk where her vision board awaited. It was covered in reminders of her goals and aspirations, some of which had been ignored for too long. As she rifled through the scattered notes, a half-formed idea began to take shape. She leaned closer, determined to breathe life into the plans that had previously felt abstract. What if she organized a workshop to share her experiences? The thought tucked excitedly in her chest, fluttering like the wings of a caged bird desperate for freedom. Teaching others could also serve as a powerful springboard for her own growth, yet another opportunity to confront the fears lurking deep within her. Her hands hovered over the corkboard as she mulled over her potential audience. Who could benefit from her narrative? Could she share the lessons she learned from her mentor? The idea sparked a reality that felt both exhilarating and intimidating. What if no one came? What if they judged her? But the fear of judgment ignited an even deeper resolve. She would not allow the very specters that had haunted her choices to dictate her next move. She grabbed a marker and wrote "workshop," finding her voice across a fresh sheet of paper. A tentative smile crept onto her lips. Planning out the structure of the workshop began to consume her thoughts. Perhaps she could incorporate group discussions, activities focused on overcoming personal obstacles, and even invite her mentor to guest speak. It all swirled together in a maelstrom of possibility. Yet, even as these hopeful ideas danced playfully in her mind, another thought intruded. What if she wasn't equipped to lead such an endeavor? She felt the weight of self-doubt pressing against her shoulders. The remnants of inadequacy threatened to surface like a tide. But digging deep beneath that fear, she tried to remind herself, your voice matters. She needed to keep turning that mantra over in her mind, as if it were an anchor in the growing storm of her thoughts. Meanwhile, at a cafe across town, John concluded his presentation, a surge of excitement coursing through him as he concluded his pitch. His colleagues were nodding. Some leaned in indications that perhaps he had struck a chord. Yet, at that moment, a wave of uncertainty crept back. Would they ultimately support his ideas? Just like Sarah, he had taken a significant leap, and with it came the realization that every step forward was shadowed by the potential for failure. As he gathered his things to leave, he reached for his phone to send a quick update to Sarah. Just finished. It felt incredible, but I doubt they bite. In the back of his mind, he questioned if his excitement would be received with enthusiasm or just a polite smile. Would his attempts at vulnerability be met with rejection? With every word he typed, he reminded himself of his own commitment to confront fear. The more they shared, the more each of them could fortify their resolve. Back at Sarah's kitchen, thoughts raced. How would she even execute such a workshop? Inspiration came, but with it, the practical reality slipped in, threatening to choke that spark of enthusiasm. How would she secure a venue? Market it? Setting her marker down, she pulled out her notepad, embarking on a logistical plan. Writing down hurdles would allow her to form responses, dismantling doubt step by step. Each jotting sent her energy soaring higher, igniting memories of progress and past accomplishments that had shaped her professional journey. But as she immersed herself in planning, a large part of her wondered, were these steps enough? Would facing logistical challenges compare to the emotional and psychological battles awaiting her? The clock ticked audibly in her mind, sealing the intensity enveloping her thoughts, a constant reminder that the true test remained ahead. Just as she regained her focus and felt empowered by the task, the nagging question returned. Was she truly prepared to face what chaos awaited with such fervor? As she moved to source more materials, Sarah felt the turbulence inside her transform. Could this new endeavor become the catalyst, not only for her growth, but also for others who needed their stories told? It didn't matter how daunting the current seemed. What mattered was how they would continue to grapple with their fears, for the chaos wasn't merely a storm to weather. It was an invitation to embrace transformation in unexpected forms. And as the workshop began to take shape, a darker thought surfaced. What if her past failures lingered in the shadows, still waiting to challenge her determination head-on? That moment seemed imminent, and she had no idea who or what would confront her next. Sarah's excitement gradually wrapped around her, settling like a comfortable blanket, but the nagging doubts crept in like a chill. Sitting at her desk with papers strewn about, she found herself staring at the notes that once inspired her. The bold headlines on her vision board seemed tantalizing yet accusatory. What if this workshop failed? What if she poured her heart into it only to be met with silence? She forced herself to breathe, clenching her fists together as if physically grounding herself. This is just planning, she said aloud, the sound of her own voice fortifying her resolve. The act of speaking her fears out loud made them feel less insurmountable. She shook her head, recollecting her mentor's admonition from their conversation. You can't control the outcome, but you can control your effort. Determined, she jotted down more ideas. Secure a venue, create promotional materials, enlist a few trusted friends to help with the logistics. Each task felt like a small mountain, yet perhaps she merely needed to take one step at a time. Flipping her notebook to a new page, Sarah wrote action plan at the top. It wasn't just a list. It was a declaration of commitment. The process demanded focus and creativity, balancing between taking those daunting steps and nurturing her self-belief. She envisioned the workshop environment a welcoming room, chairs in a circle to encourage sharing, perhaps even some light refreshments to break the ice. Each detail solidified her vision while dimming the anxiety that threatened to overshadow her aspirations. As she built this structure, she discovered a flicker of excitement in her chest. It was less about being prepared and more about daring to create a space for raw honesty. She found herself filling in prompts for group discussions, questioning how she could stimulate meaningful conversations among attendees. What moments in her life mattered most? Could vulnerability be a bridge to connection? When her phone buzzed, the interruption brought her momentarily back to reality. It was John's message, exhilaration laced with self-doubt, mirroring her own feelings. You've got this, she replied quickly, hopeful her words could instill confidence, even if only for a fleeting moment. Her heart raced in camaraderie. It wasn't merely about individual journeys. Yet the urgency returned. She had less than 3 weeks to organize everything. Could she truly manifest this workshop and sustain the energy needed for it? What if, even with all her efforts, her past failures would still haunt her? A tight knot formed in her stomach, reminding her that the unpredictability of human presence was a daunting factor. Vision boards, plans, and brainstorming sessions might help her prepare, but what if the feedback felt critical or dismissive? The anticipation of judgment hung like a fog, obscuring her clarity. Resolving to counteract the noise within, she revisited her goals. Teaching others felt liberating, yet she questioned her readiness. Pushing through, Sarah recalled the moments where she had overcome significant personal challenges, the breakthroughs that made her realize the power of her own voice. What did I learn? She pondered. Gradually, she crafted another layer of her workshop, a session on self-acceptance and managing fear. These internal battles shaped her journey, and understanding them could illuminate the paths of others. Diving deeper, she acknowledged her own vulnerabilities, each realization strengthening her resolve to facilitate the honesty she craved from others. Tension brewed inside her like a bubbling pot, each new idea provoking excitement and anxiety in equal measure. Will she be able to pull this off? Could she confront her past failures in front of a crowd? The stakes felt higher as the clock ticked cruelly. As she prepared to raid the nearest bookstore for materials, a shiver of apprehension prickled her skin. Could her workshop truly be the turning point she envisioned? Or would it amplify her insecurities, forcing her to confront the ghosts of who she had been? With that challenge looming, the battle was no longer just about organizing logistics. It was about standing against the barrage of self-doubt, emerging with clarity and conviction. A message awaited her, calling her resolve into question. How long could she suppress the darkness that lingered, poised to challenge her ambition? The door opened for change, yet she had no idea what awaited her on the other side. What would she find when she stepped into the light? The workshop felt like it could either be lifeline or labyrinth, and Sarah stood on the precipice, ready to leap. As the day of the workshop dawned, Sarah woke early, her heart racing with equal parts excitement and dread. Everything was set, but the shadows of self-doubt loomed large. She felt the weight of her purpose pressing against her ribs. This wasn't merely a gathering. It was a manifestation of all the struggles she had faced, each one a stepping stone that had fortified her resolve. When the first attendees began to arrive, she felt the ambient buzz of anticipation threading through the room. Each person she welcomed represented a new opportunity, a chance to share experiences, exchange stories, and let their vulnerabilities surface. Her earlier anxiety was soon eclipsed by a burgeoning sense of confidence. This was not a performance. It was an invitation for honesty. The circle of chairs felt like a sanctuary they all inhabited together. As Sarah introduced the workshop, her voice steadied. They would explore the concept of finding one's voice, a journey echoing her own. Every moment of fear and hesitation she had endured coalesced into this singular experience of compassion and connection. With each session, the atmosphere shifted. The participants spoke candidly about their challenges. Some had faced job loss, others the intricacies of balancing family life, and a few shared the haunting remnants of loss. Each revelation intertwined with her own narrative, creating an invisible bond born out of shared courage. She could see their eyes light up as they opened up to one another. This was everything she had envisioned and more. Midway through, Sarah introduced an activity centered around the notion of chaos as opportunity. She asked participants to write down a moment of chaos in their lives, then pair up to discuss what growth emerged from that experience. The exchanges flowed, and Sarah felt a swell of unity in the room, understanding dawning within each participant that they were not alone in their struggles. Then it happened. A moment unfolded that pulled on her heartstrings. An attendee shared a story of resilience, of being a working mother alongside pursuing her own dreams. "I used to think I had to hide my ambitions to be a good mother," she said, her voice cracking slightly. "But I've learned that sharing my journey with my children teaches them strength." Sarah was struck. This mirrored her own fears. Was she allowing her responsibilities to overshadow her aspirations? That voice inside her screamed for acknowledgement. Yes, she could be both a devoted mother and an ambitious individual. The workshop wasn't merely beneficial to others. It was a turning point for her too. Post-workshop evaluations flooded in, blossoming with gratitude. Attendees expressed breakthrough moments, harrowing realizations, and unveiled ambition. One message resonated particularly. "This space gave me the confidence to chase my dreams. Thank you for guiding us." After everything wrapped up, Sarah sat alone in the empty room, the remnants of conversations flickering like faded stars. Satisfaction washed over her like the glow of dawn. She had achieved something tangible, elevated her voice, and facilitated the voice of others. She had proven to herself that she could lead, that she could influence transformation not only in others, but also within herself. Fast forward a month, Sarah now stood before her mirror with renewed confidence. The workshop had developed into a thriving community of learners and sharers, bringing forth themes of courage and vulnerability. She maintained connections with attendees, fostering an environment of continuous growth. Meanwhile, John reached out to share his success. The project he pitched had been greenlit, a triumphant leap that would elevate his career. He attributed part of his bravery to their conversation. The seed of vulnerability she had planted helped him articulate his ideas with authenticity. As their paths entwined, each had transformed through their individual journeys, shattering the barriers built from fear and insecurity. Sarah had become not just a waitress, but a facilitator of transformation, embracing her ambition while navigating her roles as a mother and a professional. With a deep breath, she allowed herself to relish in the essence of discovery. Her workshop had ignited a flame of community, resilience, and strength that echoed through her future. She had conquered not just the fear of exposure, but the very constructs that had previously boxed her, and this was her moment of awakening. The reflections etched in the fabric of their encounters served as gentle reminders. As she picked up her pen to jot down her next workshop plans, she understood the essence of what he and she had achieved, not just personal victories, but authentic transformation that inspired others to transcend their chaos. This was the moment she had long pursued, and she was unequivocally ready to embrace whatever chaos lay ahead. Now, are you feeling inspired by Sarah's story? You need to subscribe now to the channel to catch more exclusive emotional stories just like this one. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure this transformative message reaches even more people. Comment your thoughts and theories about their extraordinary journeys. What did you find most impactful? And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need a dose of inspiration in their lives. Together, we can spread the word about personal growth and overcoming obstacles.